The soil beneath an abandoned city in the Amazon rainforest has been sitting untouched for over 2,000 years. No one has fertilized it. No one has composted into it. No one has done anything to it at all. And when modern researchers finally dug into it and ran it through laboratory analysis, the microbial activity readings were so high, they broke the standard instruments. That soil is still fertile right now, 20 centuries after the civilization that created it vanished from the earth. The substance responsible for that fertility is a dark powder that costs less than $2 a pound today. One application, no reapplication, and the ground stays productive for generations. That is not folklore. It is a documented laboratory-confirmed fact published in peer-reviewed research across multiple continents. And it raises a question that deserves an honest answer. If something this powerful already exists, why has almost no one at the garden center ever mentioned it? The Amazon rainforest looks like it should have the richest soil on the planet. It does not. In a tropical rainforest, the nutrient cycle happens almost entirely above ground. The trees hold the wealth. When a leaf drops, surface roots devour it immediately. The actual dirt underneath is thin, acidic, and almost completely stripped of the organic matter that vegetables need to grow. Clear the trees, and what remains is red clay that bakes hard under the sun and washes away with the first heavy rain. Traditional slash-and-burn farming in the Amazon exhausts a plot in 2 or 3 seasons. The farmer moves on, burns another patch, and the cycle repeats. So when the Spanish conquistador Francisco de Orellana pushed his expedition into the Amazon basin in 1542, he expected scattered tribes at most. Instead, he found massive settlements stretching along the riverbanks for miles. His chroniclers estimated populations in the millions. And surrounding those cities, cultivated farmland producing abundant food from the same ground, apparently for centuries. The answer was buried directly beneath their feet. Running several feet deep under those settlements was a dark, almost black earth, strikingly different from the pale red clay everywhere else. The locals called it Terra Preta de Indio, the dark earth of the Indians. Dig a hole in the untouched jungle soil nearby, and the contrast was impossible to miss. Pale, thin, and lifeless on one side, deep, dark, and teeming with life on the other. Same rainfall, same climate, same latitude, completely different soil. Western science ignored it for centuries. The real investigation did not begin until 1966, when a Dutch soil scientist named Wim Sombroek published a landmark study called Amazon Soils. And here is the detail that sent shockwaves through the research community when it was finally confirmed. Left completely alone, Terra Preta spreads. It converts the depleted soil around it into its own rich, dark likeness, slowly, steadily, without any human intervention at all. Researchers initially assumed the fertility came from standard organic matter, composted waste, fish bones, manure. Logical enough. But carbon dating told a different story. The carbon in Terra Preta was thousands of years old, and it was not decomposing. Normal organic carbon breaks down over time. This was not normal organic carbon. It was char, what the scientific world now calls biochar. Those ancient civilizations had not simply composted their waste. They had systematically created charcoal under controlled conditions and worked it into their land. They built a soil structure so permanent that more than 2,000 years after their cities collapsed, the dark earth remained as fertile as the day it was made. Most people have burned wood in a campfire. Full combustion turns wood into carbon dioxide and water vapor. The carbon floats away as smoke, and what remains is powdery ash, useful for almost nothing in the garden. But change one variable and the result is completely different. Heat organic material, wood, plant stalks, even nutshells, at temperatures above 300 degrees Celsius, but restrict the oxygen supply so it cannot fully combust. This process is called pyrolysis. The volatile gases escape, the cellular structure breaks down, but the carbon skeleton, the rigid microscopic framework of the original material, stays intact. What remains is not ash. It is a lattice of pure carbon, with a structure so intricate that a single gram of high-quality biochar contains between 200 and 400 square meters of internal surface area. That is roughly 4 tennis courts compressed into a crumb small enough to pinch between 2 fingers. That number matters because soil fertility is not really about dirt. It is about the microorganisms living in the dirt: bacteria, fungi, archaea, the invisible workforce that makes nutrients available to plant roots. These organisms are tiny. The microscopic spaces between soil particles are their entire world, and they do not tolerate exposure. A heavy rain flushes them away. Direct sunlight kills them. They thrive when they can colonize protected surfaces and build stable communities. Biochar gives them exactly that. Each particle is riddled with millions of microscopic caves, tunnels, and chambers. Fungal networks thread through them. Beneficial bacteria coat the interior walls. Organisms that would normally wash straight through sandy soil finally have a permanent address. The population density of microbes around a single biochar particle can be orders of magnitude higher than in untreated soil, just a fraction of an inch away. Here is the distinction that changes everything about how to think about soil health. Biochar does not feed the soil. It houses the organisms that feed the soil. Feeding is temporary. Every bag of synthetic nitrogen fertilizer delivers a quick spike followed by an inevitable crash. The soil stays hungry. The microbial population flares briefly and then collapses when the synthetic input runs out. It is a boom and bust cycle that mirrors what happens to farmland under monoculture. Short-term gain, long-term depletion. Housing is permanent. Once the microbial community moves in and stabilizes inside the pore network, something remarkable begins. Mycorrhizal fungi, thread-like organisms that extend plant root systems by orders of magnitude, weave through the tunnels and reach mineral deposits that roots alone could never access. They pull phosphorus from locked-up soil particles and deliver it directly to the plant in exchange for sugars. Meanwhile, nitrogen-fixing bacteria settle into adjacent pores and begin pulling nitrogen straight out of the atmosphere, converting it into a form plant roots can absorb. Free of charge, no bag required. This is exactly why Terra Preta appears to spread on its own. The thriving microbial ecosystem it supports slowly heals and transforms the exhausted soil around it, year after year, with zero additional input. If this is changing the way you think about what is happening beneath your garden, take a second and share this with a friend who spends every spring hauling bags from the garden center. Drop a comment below and let me know if you have ever tried biochar, or if this is the first time you are hearing about it. And subscribe if you have not already, because the practical application details ahead are what make the difference between wasting this information and actually using it. So if biochar does all of this, why is there no biochar aisle at the hardware store? The synthetic fertilizer industry is not small. The major manufacturers have combined revenues exceeding $80 billion a year. Add pesticides and herbicides, and the figure climbs sharply. The entire business model rests on a single assumption: that soil is a dead container. Pour in synthetic nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Extract the harvest, the soil depletes, buy more product next spring, repeat forever. If the soil becomes compacted or acidic from years of chemical application, there is another product for that, and another for the problem that product creates. The cycle is self-reinforcing and extremely profitable. Biochar disrupts that cycle at the root, not because it replaces fertilizer with another product, but because it gradually eliminates the need for external inputs altogether. A landmark study published in 2009 tracked biochar amended soils over 12 years. By the end of that observation period, those soils required 45% less external fertilizer. By the 15th year, the need for synthetic applications had effectively disappeared. From a business perspective, a one-time purchase that steadily reduces the customer's dependence is the opposite of a recurring revenue model. This is not a dramatic conspiracy. No one held secret meetings to suppress biochar. Research funding simply flows toward technologies that generate ongoing sales, not technologies that make customers self-sufficient. Gardening media runs on advertising from chemical companies. The financial architecture of the industry does not reward talking about this. But the research exists regardless. A recent meta-analysis of 438 global studies found that sustained biochar application increases global crop yields by an average of 10.8%. It raises soil organic carbon content by 52.5%. And when combined with standard fertilizers, biochar boosts crop yield by up to 48% compared to unfertilized land. Larger tomatoes, brighter flowers, healthier root systems, all with less money spent and less labor hauling bags from the store. There is also something biochar does for health and the environment that makes the story even more compelling. Every year, agriculture generates enormous volumes of crop waste. When that waste is burned in the open or left to decompose, it releases methane and nitrous oxide, two greenhouse gases far more potent than carbon dioxide. Nitrous oxide traps roughly 300 times more heat per molecule. Converting that same waste into biochar through pyrolysis flips the equation. Studies show biochar reduces methane emissions from soil by 13.5% and cuts nitrous oxide emissions by 21.4%. Instead of carbon cycling back into the atmosphere, biochar locks it underground, stable, inert, and sequestered for centuries. But here is the benefit that matters most to anyone growing food for their family. Decades of industrial activity have left heavy metals scattered through soils across the country. Lead, cadmium, zinc. These contaminants can silently migrate into the root systems of vegetables. The produce looks healthy, it tastes fine, but the metals are there. Biochar's vast internal surface area acts as a filter. Its porous structure and unique surface chemistry bind heavy metals and immobilize them, locking contaminants away so they cannot reach plant roots. For anyone who has built a vegetable garden near an old house, a busy road, or in a suburb on former industrial land, this is not a small thing. It is the difference between hoping the soil is clean and actually making it clean. Biochar also buffers soil pH naturally. Acidic ground that makes tomatoes struggle gets gently neutralized. The alkaline minerals bound within its carbon structure release slowly, keeping the pH stable for years rather than months. One application handles what agricultural lime needs to be reapplied to manage every season. Now the practical question: how does biochar actually get from concept to garden bed? Walk into a typical garden center and ask for biochar. The response, more often than not, is a blank look. The few stores that carry it stock small, premium packaged bags priced at $25 to $35. That markup is enormous. Bought in bulk from agricultural suppliers or online, the same material runs about $2 a pound. Better yet, biochar can be made at home from organic waste already lying around the yard. The simplest approach is the cone pit method. Dig a shallow cone-shaped hole, build a hot fire inside with dry wood and twigs, and once a strong bed of coals forms, begin feeding in dry biomass. Wood scraps, plant stalks, nutshells. The goal is controlled charring, not full combustion. Restrict the oxygen just enough that the material blackens and smokes without bursting into open flame. When the pieces are thoroughly charred, black, light, and no longer producing volatile smoke, quench everything with water to lock the carbon structure in place. A clean metal 5-gallon bucket with a tight-fitting lid works too. Fill it with dry biomass, set it in the center of a campfire or fire pit, and let the heat do the work. The lid restricts oxygen inside the bucket, while the surrounding fire provides the temperature. After cooling, the result is clean, usable biochar. Now here is the single most important thing to know before putting any of this in the garden. This is the step that trips up almost everyone the first time. Raw biochar should never go directly into the soil. Those millions of empty microscopic pores are bone dry and completely vacant. Placed into a garden bed in that state, raw biochar acts like an aggressive sponge, pulling nitrogen and moisture away from plant roots. The garden will look worse, not better, for weeks. Many people try biochar once, skip this step, see their plants suffer, and conclude the whole thing does not work. It does work. They just skip the charging. Charging biochar is simple. Mix the raw char into a pile of finished compost, aged manure, or soak it in a batch of actively brewing compost tea. Leave it there for 2 to 4 weeks. During that time, microorganisms and dissolved nutrients flood into the pores, colonizing every internal surface. The biochar goes from empty housing to a fully occupied microbial neighborhood. When charged biochar finally enters the garden, it arrives already alive, supporting the soil ecosystem from day one instead of competing with it. For established garden beds, work about 2 to 4 pounds of charged biochar per square foot into the top 12 inches of soil. For containers, raised planters, and patio gardens, mixing 15 to 20% biochar by volume into the potting mix delivers strong results. The first season or two may feel slow. That is normal. The microbial community is building. Root networks are expanding into the newly available pore spaces. Nutrient cycling is ramping up but has not yet hit full capacity. Some gardeners report modest improvements in year 1, and then dramatically better results by year 2 or 3. Healthier foliage, stronger root systems, better water retention during dry spells, and visibly richer soil color. The trajectory is upward, and it does not reverse. Once established, it is permanent infrastructure, not a treatment that fades, not an amendment that washes away, a one-time installation that only improves with age. The civilizations that built Terra Preta are gone. Their cities vanished under jungle canopy. Their languages, their art, their daily lives dissolved into history. But the soil they prepared is still there, still dark, still fertile, still spreading. They did not survive because they built monuments. They survived in the most literal, measurable way because they changed the chemistry of the ground beneath their feet. Everything else they created has disappeared. The soil remains. Every handful of charged biochar worked into a garden bed is a small echo of that same idea. It captures carbon, it filters contaminants, it reduces dependence on an industry built on planned obsolescence. And it leaves behind a patch of earth that will still be producing life long after the person who amended it has moved on. The powder costs $2. The results last for centuries. And the only reason more people do not know about it is that no one profits from selling a product just once. That is worth changing, one garden at a time. Happy gardening.